both of them. Though the same blood of their father flowed through their veins, the two battled each other fiercely like arch-enemies. It seemed as if they derived some sort of twisted pleasure from this brotherly fighting. But in the end, only one was left standing. Want to know the name?
Book 3, Part 2 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Lars Rolander. The Aeneid by Publius Vergilius Maro, translated by John Dryden. Book 3. Sea Wanderings and Strange Meetings, Part 2. When parted hence, the wind that ready waits for Sicily shall bear you to the straits, where proud Pelorus opes a wider way. Tack to the larboard and stand off to sea. Veer starboard, sea and land, the Italian shore, and far Sicilia's coast were one before. An earthquake caused the flow, the roaring tides, the passage broke that land from land divides, and where the lands retired, the rushing ocean rides, distinguish'd by the straits on either hand. Now rising cities in long order stand, and fruitful fields, so much can time invade, the mouldering work that beauteous nature made. Far on the right her dogs foul Scylla hides, Charybdis roaring on the left presides, and in her greedy whirlpool sucks the tides, then spouts them from below, with fury driven. The waves mount up and wash the face of heaven. But Scylla from her den, with open jaws, the sinking vessel in her eddy draws, then dashes on the rocks, and human face, a virgin bosom, hides her tail's disgrace. Her parts obscene below the waves descend, with dogs enclosed, and in a dolphin end. 'Tis safer then to bear aloof to sea, and coast Pachynus, though with more delay, than once to view mishappen Scylla near, and the loud yell of watery wolves to hear. Besides, if faith to Helenus be due, and if prophetic Phoebus tell me true, do not this precept of your friend forget, which therefore more than once I must repeat. Above the rest great Juno's name adore, pay vows to Juno, Juno's aid implore. Let gifts be to the mighty queen design'd, and mollify with prayers her haughty mind. Thus at the length your passage shall be free, and you shall safe descend on Italy. Arriv'd at Cumae, when you view the flood of black Avernus and the sounding wood, the mad prophetic Sibyl you shall find, dark in a cave and on a rock reclined. She sings the fates, and in her frantic fits the notes and names inscribed to leaves commits. What she commits to leaves, in order laid, before the cavern's entrance are display'd. Unmov'd they lie, but if a blast of wind without, or vapours issue from behind, the leaves are borne aloft in liquid air, and she resumes no more her museful care, nor gathers from the rocks her scatter'd verse, nor sets in order what the winds disperse. Thus many not succeeding, most upbraid the madness of the visionary maid, and with loud curses leave the mystic shade. Think it not loss of time a while to stay, though thy companions chide thy long delay. Though summon'd to the seas, though pleasing gales invite thy course, and stretch thy swelling sails, but beg the sacred priestess to relate with willing words, and not to write thy fate. The fierce Italian people she will show, and all thy wars, and all thy future woe, and what thou must avoid, and what must undergo. She shall direct thy course, instruct thy mind, and teach thee how the happy shores to find. This is what Heav'n allows me to relate. Now part in peace, pursue thy better fate, and raise by strength of arms the Trojan state. This when the priest with friendly voice declar'd, he gave me license, and rich gifts prepar'd. Bounteous of treasure, he supplied my want with heavy gold and polish'd elephant. Then Dodonean caldrons put on board, and every ship with sums of silver stored. A trusty coat of mail to me he sent, thrice chain'd with gold for use and ornament. The helm of Pyrrhus added to the rest, that flourish'd with a plume and waving crest. Nor was my sire forgotten, nor my friends, and large recruits he to my navy sends. Men, horses, captains, arms, and warlike stores, supplies new pilots, and new sweeping oars. Meantime my sire commands to hoist our sails, lest we should lose the first auspicious gales. The prophet bless'd the parting crew, and last, with words like these, his ancient friend embraced. Old happy man, the care of gods above, whom heav'nly Venus honour'd with her love, and twice preserved thy life when Troy was lost. Behold from far the wish'd Ausonian coast, their land, but take a larger compass round, for that before is all forbidden ground. The shore that Phoebus has designed for you, at farther distant lies, conceal'd from view. Go happy hence, and seek your new abodes, bless'd in a son, and favour'd by the gods. For I with useless words prolong your stay, when southern gales have summon'd you away. Nor less the queen our parting thence deplor'd, nor was less bounteous than her Trojan lord. A noble present to my son she brought, a robe with flowers on golden tissue wrought, a Phrygian vest, and loads with gifts beside, of precious texture and of Asian pride. Accept, she said, these monuments of love, which in my youth with happier hands I wove. Regard these trifles for the giver's sake, 'tis the last present Hector's wife can make. Thou call'st my lost Astyanax to mind, in thee his features and his form I find. His eyes so sparkled with a lively flame, such were his motions, such was all his frame. And had Heav'n so pleas'd, his years had been the same. With tears I took my last adieu, and said: Your fortune, happy pair, already made, leaves you no farther wish. My diff'rent state, avoiding one, incurs another fate. To you a quiet seat the gods allow, You have no shores to search, no seas to plough, nor fields of flying Italy to chase, deluding visions and a vain embrace. You see another Simois and enjoy the labour of your hands, another Troy, with better auspice than her ancient towers, and less obnoxious to the Grecian powers. If ever the gods, whom I with vows adore, conduct my steps to Tiber's happy shore, if ever I ascend the Latian throne, and build a city I may call my own, as both of us our birth from Troy derive, so let our kindred lines in concord live, and both in acts of equal friendship strive. Our fortunes, good or bad, shall be the same, the double Troy shall differ but in name, that what we now begin may never end, but long to late posterity descend. Near the Ceronian rocks our course we bore, the shortest passage to the Italian shore. Now had the sun withdrawn his radiant light, and hills were hid in dusky shades of night. We land, and on the bosom of the ground a safe retreat and a bare lodging found. Close by the shore we lay, the sailors keep their watches, and the rest securely sleep. The night proceeding on with silent pace, stood in her noon and viewed with equal face her steepy rise and her declining race. Then wakeful Palinurus rose to spy the face of heaven and the nocturnal sky, and listened every breath of air to try, observes the stars, and notes their sliding course, the Pleiads, Rheiads, and their watery falls. And both the bears is careful to behold, and bright Orion arm'd with burnish'd gold. Then, when he saw no threat'ning tempest nigh, but a sure promise of a settled sky, he gave the sign to weigh. We break our sleep, forsake the pleasing shore, and plough the deep. And now the rising morn with rosy light adorns the skies, and put the stars to flight. When we from far, like bluish mist, descry the hills and then the plains of Italy, Achates first pronounced the joyful sound, then Italy the cheerful crew rebound. My sire Anchises crown'd a cup with wine, and off'ring thus implor'd the powers divine: "Ye gods, presiding over lands and seas, and you who raging winds and waves appease, breathe on our swelling sails a prosperous wind, and smooth our passage to the port assign'd." The gentle gales their flagging force renew, and now the happy harbour is in view. Minerva's temple then salutes our sight, plac'd as a landmark on the mountain's height. We furl our sails, and turn the prows to shore. The curling waters round the galleys roar. The land lies open to the raging east, then, bending like a bow, with rocks compress'd, shuts out the storms the winds and waves complain, and vent their malice on the cliffs in vain. The port lies hid within on either side. Two towering rocks the narrow mouth divide. The temple, which aloft we view'd before, to distance flies, and seems to shun the shore. Scarce landed, the first omens I beheld were 4 white steeds that cropp'd the flowery field. "War, war is threaten'd from this foreign ground," my father cried, "where warlike steeds are found." Yet, since reclaim'd to chariots they submit, and bend to stubborn yokes, and chant the bit, "Peace may succeed to war." Our way we bend to Pallas, and the sacred hill ascend. There prostrate to the fierce Virago pray, whose temple was the landmark of our way. Each with a Phrygian mantle veil'd his head, and all commands of Helenus obey'd, and pious rites to Grecian Juno paid. These dues perform'd, we stretch our sails and stand to sea, forsaking that suspected land. From hence Tarentum's base appears in view, for Hercules renown'd, if fame be true. Just opposite Lacinian Juno stands, Caulonian towers and Scylacian strands. For shipwrecks fear'd, Mount Aetna's thence we spy, known by the smoky flames which cloud the sky. Far off we hear the waves with surly sound invade the rocks their groans rebound. The billows break upon the sounding strand, and roll the rising tide impure with sand. Then thus Anchises, in experience old: "'Tis that Charybdis which the seer foretold, and those promis'd rocks. Bear off to sea." With haste the frighted mariners obey. First Palinurus to the larboard veer'd, then all the fleet by his example steer'd. To heav'n aloft of ridgy waves we ride, then down to hell descend, when they divide. And thrice our galleys knock'd the stony ground, and thrice the hollow rocks return'd the sound. And thrice we saw the stars that stood with dews around. The flagging winds forsook us with the sun, and wearied on Cyclopian shores we run. The port capacious and secure from wind is to the foot of thund'ring Aetna join'd. By turns a pitchy cloud she rolls on high, by turns hot embers from her entrails fly, and flakes of mounting flames that lick the sky. Oft from her bowels massy rocks are thrown, and shiver'd by the force come piecemeal down. Oft liquid lakes of burning sulphur flow, fed from the fiery springs that boil below. Enceladus, they say, transfix'd by Jove, with blasted limbs came tumbling from above, and where he fell, th' avenging Father drew this flaming hill, and on his body threw. As often as he turns his weary sides, he shakes the solid isle, and smoke the heavens hides. In shady woods we pass the tedious night, where bellowing sounds and groans our souls affright, of which no cause is offer'd to the sight. For not one star was kindled in the sky, nor could the moon her borrow'd light supply. For misty clouds involv'd the firmament, the stars were muffled, and the moon was pent. Scarce had the rising sun the day reveal'd, scarce had his heat the pearly dews dispell'd, when from the woods there bolts before our sight somewhat betwixt a mortal and a sprite. So thin, so ghastly meagre, and so wan, so bare of flesh, he scarce resembled man. This thing, all tatter'd, seem'd from far to implore our pious aid, and pointed to the shore. We look'd behind, then view his shaggy beard. His clothes were tagg'd with thorns, and filth his limbs besmear'd. The rest is mean, in habit and in face, appear'd a Greek, and such indeed he was. He cast on us from far a frightful view, whom soon for Trojans and for foes he knew. Stood still and paus'd, then all at once began to stretch his limbs, and trembled as he ran. Soon as approach'd, upon his knees he falls, and thus with tears and sighs for pity calls. Now, by the powers above, and what we share from nature's common gift, this vital air, O Trojans, take me hence, I beg no more, but bear me far from this unhappy shore. 'Tis true I am a Greek, and farther own, among your foes besieg'd imperial town. For such demerits, if my death be due, no more for this abandon'd life I sue. This only favour let my tears obtain, to throw me headlong in the rapid main. Since nothing more than death my crime demands, I die content to die by human hands. He said, and on his knees my knees embraced. I bade him boldly tell his fortune past, his present state, his lineage, and his name, the occasion of his fears, and whence he came. The good Anchises raised him with his hand, who thus encouraged answered our demand. From Ithaca, my native soil, I came, to Troy, and Achaemenides my name. Me my poor father with Ulysses sent. Oh, had I stay'd with poverty content! But fearful for themselves, my countrymen left me forsaken in the Cyclops' den. The cave, though large, was dark. The dismal floor was paved with mangled limbs and putrid gore. Our monstrous host, of more than human size, erects his head and stares within the skies, bellowing his voice, and horrid is his hue. Ye gods, remove this plague from mortal view. The joints of slaughter'd wretches are his food, and for his wine he quaffs the streaming blood. These eyes beheld, when with his spacious hand he seized two captives of our Grecian band. Stretch'd on his back he dash'd against the stones their broken bodies and their cracking bones. With spouting blood the purple pavement swims, while the dire glutton grinds the trembling limbs. Not unreveng'd Ulysses bore their fate, nor thoughtless of his own unhappy state. For gorged with flesh and drunk with human wine, while fast asleep the giant lay supine, snoring aloud and belching from his maw his indigested foam and morsels raw. We pray, we cast the lots, and then surround the monstrous body stretched along the ground. Each as he could approach him lends a hand to bore his eyeball with a flaming brand. Beneath his frowning forehead lay his eye, for only one did the vast frame supply. But that a globe so large his front it fill'd, like the sun's disk or like a Grecian shield. The stroke succeeds, and down the pupil vents this vengeance follow'd for our slaughter'd friends. But haste, unhappy wretches, haste to fly! Your cables cut, and on your oars rely. Such, and so vast as Polypheme appears, 100 more this hated island bears. Like him in caves they shut their woolly sheep, like him their herds on tops of mountains keep, like him with mighty strides they stalk from steep to steep. And now 3 moons their sharpen'd horns renew, since thus in woods and wilds, obscure from view, I drag my loathsome days with mortal fright, and in deserted caverns lodge by night. Oft from the rocks a dreadful prospect see of the huge Cyclops, like a walking tree. From far I hear his thund'ring voice resound, and trampling feet that shake the solid ground. Cornels and salvage berries of the wood, and roots and herbs have been my meager food. While all around my longing eyes I cast, I saw your happy ships appear at last. On those I fix'd my hopes, to these I run. 'Tis all I ask, this cruel race to shun. What other death you please yourselves bestow. Scarce had he said, when on the mountain's brow we saw the giant shepherd stalk before his following flock, and leading to the shore. A monstrous bulk, deform'd the creed sight, his staff a trunk of pine, to guide his steps aright. His ponderous whistle from his neck descends, his woolly care their pensive lord attends. This only solace his hard fortune sends. Soon as he reach'd the shore and touch'd the waves, from his bor'd eye the guttering flood he laves. He gnash'd his teeth, and groan'd thro' seas he strides, and scarce the topmost billows touch'd his sides. Seiz'd with a sudden fear, we run to sea, the cables cut, and silent haste away. The well-deserving stranger entertain, then buckling to the work, our oars divide the main. The giant hearken'd to the dashing sound, but when our vessels out of reach he found, he strided onward, and in vain essay'd the Ionian deep, and durst no farther wade. With that he roar'd aloud the dreadful cry, shakes earth and air, and seas the billows flee before the bellowing noise to distant Italy. The neighb'ring Aetna trembling all around, the winding caverns echo to the sound. His brother Cyclops hear the yelling roar, and, rushing down the mountains, crowd the shore. We saw their stern, distorted looks from far, and one-eyed glance that vainly threatened war. A dreadful council, with their heads on high, the mystic clouds about their foreheads fly, not yielding to the towering tree of Jove, our tallest cypress of Diana's grove. New pangs of mortal fear our minds assail. We tug at every oar, and hoist up every sail, and take the advantage of the friendly gale. Forewarned by Helenus, we strive to shun Charybdis gulf, nor dare to Scylla run. An equal fate on either side appears. We, tacking to the left, are free from fears. For from Pelorus' point the north arose, and drew us back where swift Pantagias flows. His rocky mouth we pass, and make our way by Thapsus and Megara's winding bay. This passage Achaemenides had shown, tracing the course which he before had run. Right over against Plemirion's watery strand, there lies an isle once called the Ortygian land. Alpheus, as old fame reports, has found from Greece a secret passage underground. By love to beauteous Arethusa led, and mingling here they rolled in the same sacred bed. As Helenus enjoin'd, we next adore Diana's name, protectress of the shore. With prosperous gales we pass the quiet sounds of still Elorus and his fruitful bounds. Then, doubling Cape Pachynus, we survey the rocky shore extended to the sea. The town of Camarine from far we see, a fenny lake undrained by fate's decree. In sight of the Geloan fields we pass, and the large walls where mighty Gela was. Then Agragas with lofty summits crown'd, long for the race of warlike steeds renown'd. We pass Selinus and the palmy land, and widely shun the Lilybaean strand, unsafe for secret rocks and moving sand. At length on shore the weary fleet arriv'd, which Drepanum's unhappy port receiv'd. Here, after endless labours, often toss'd by raging storms, and driven on every coast, my dear, dear father, spent with age, I lost. Ease of my cares, and solace of my pain, sav'd thro' 1,000 toils, but sav'd in vain. The prophet, who my future woes reveal'd, yet this the greatest and the worst conceal'd. And dire Selene, whose foreboding skill denounc'd all else, was silent of the ill. This my last labour was, Some friendly god from thence convey'd us to our blest abode. Thus to the list'ning queen the royal guest his wand'rings course and all his toils express'd, and here concluding he retir'd to rest. End of Book 3 of the Aeneid. Read by Lars Rolander.
Book 4, Part 1 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Philippa Jevons. The Aeneid by Publius Vergilius Maro, translated by John Dryden. Book 4, The Passion of the Queen, Part 1. But anxious cares already seized the queen. She fed within her veins a flame unseen. The hero's valour, acts, and birth inspire her soul with love and fan the secret fire. His words, his looks, imprinted in her heart, improve the passion and increase the smart. Now, when the purple morn had chased away the dewy shadows and restored the day, her sister first with early care she sought, and thus in mournful accents eased her thought. My dearest Anna, what new dreams affright my labouring soul? What visions of the night disturb my quiet and distract my breast with strange ideas of our Trojan guest? His worth, his actions, and majestic air a man descended from the gods declare. Fear ever argues a degenerate kind. His birth is well asserted by his mind. Then what he suffered when by fate betrayed! What brave attempts for falling Troy he made! Such were his looks, so gracefully he spoke, that were I not resolved against the yoke of hapless marriage, never to be cursed with second love, so fatal was my first, to this one error I might yield again. For since Sichaeus was untimely slain, this only man is able to subvert the fixed foundations of my stubborn heart, and to confess my frailty, to my shame. Somewhat I find within, if not the same, too like the sparkles of my former flame. But first let yawning earth a passage rend, and let me through the dark abyss descend. First let avenging Jove with flames from high drive down this body to the nether sky, condemned with ghosts in endless night to lie, before I break the plighted faith I gave. No, he who had my vows shall ever have. For whom I loved on earth, I worship in the grave. She said. The tears ran gushing from her eyes and stopped her speech. Her sister thus replies, Oh, dearer than the vital air I breathe, will you to grief your blooming years bequeath, condemned to waste in woes your lonely life, without the joys of mother or of wife? Think you these tears, this pompous train of woe, are known or valued by the ghosts below? I grant that, while your sorrows yet were green, it well became a woman and a queen the vows of Tyrian princes to neglect, to scorn he harbours and his love reject, with all the Libyan lords of mighty name. But will you fight against a pleasing flame? This little spot of land which heaven bestows on every side is hemmed with warlike foes. Gaetulian cities here are spread around, and fierce Numidians there your frontiers bound. Here lies a barren waste of thirsty land, and there the Syrtes raise the moving sand. Barcaean troops besiege the narrow shore, and from the sea Pygmalion threatens more. Propitious heaven and gracious Juno, lead this wandering navy to your needful aid. How will your empire spread, your city rise, from such a union, and with such allies? Implore the favour of the powers above, and leave the conduct of the rest to love. Continue still your hospitable way, and still invent occasions of their stay, till storms and winter winds shall cease to threat, and planks and oars repair their shattered fleet. These words, which from a friend and sister came, with ease resolved the scruples of her fame, and added fury to the kindled flame. Inspired with hope, the project they pursue, on every altar sacrifice renew. A chosen ewe of 2 years old they pay to Ceres, Bacchus, and the god of day, preferring Juno's pow'r, for Juno ties the nuptial knot, and makes the marriage joys. The beauteous queen before her altar stands, and holds the golden goblet in her hands. A milk-white heifer she with flowers adorns, and pours the ruddy wine betwixt her horns. And while the priests with prayer the gods invoke, she feeds their altars with Sabaean smoke. With hourly care the sacrifice renews, and anxiously the panting entrails views. What priestly rites, alas, what pious art, what vows avail to cure a bleeding heart? A gentle fire she feeds within her veins, where the soft god secure in silence reigns. Sick with desire and seeking him she loves, from street to street the raving Dido roves. So when the watchful shepherd from the blind wounds with a random shaft the careless hind, distracted with her pain she flies the woods, bounds o'er the lawn, and seeks the silent floods, with fruitless care, for still the fatal dart sticks in her side, and rankles in her heart. And now she leads the Trojan chief along the lofty walls, amidst the busy throng, displays her Tyrian wealth and rising town, which love, without his labour, makes his own. This pomp she shows to tempt her wandering guest, her faltering tongue forbids to speak the rest. When day declines, and feasts renew the night, still on his face she feeds her famished sight. She longs again to hear the prince relate his own adventures and the Trojan fate. He tells it o'er and o'er, but still in vain, for still she begs to hear it once again. The hearer on the speaker's mouth depends, and thus the tragic story never ends. Then, when they part, when Phoebe's paler light withdraws, and falling stars to sleep invite, she last remains. When every guest is gone, sits on the bed heap rest, and sighs alone. Absent, her absent hero sees and hears, or in her bosom young Ascanius bears, and seeks the father's image in the child, if love by likeness might be so beguiled. Meantime the rising towers are at a stand, No labours exercise the youthful band, nor use of arts, nor toils of arms they know. The mole is left unfinished to the foe. The mounds, the works, the walls neglected lie, short of their promised height, that seem'd to fret the sky. But when imperial Juno from above saw Dido fetter'd in the chains of love, hot with the venom which her veins inflamed, and by no sense of shame to be reclaimed, with soothing words to Venus she begun. High praises, endless honours you have won, and mighty trophies with your worthy son. 2 gods a silly woman have undone. Nor am I ignorant, you both suspect this rising city which my hands erect. But shall celestial discord never cease? 'Tis better ended in a lasting peace. You stand possess'd of all your soul desir'd. Poor Dido with consuming love is fir'd. Your Trojan with my Tyrian let us join. So Dido shall be yours, Aeneas mine. One common kingdom, one united line. Eliza shall a Dardan lord obey, and lofty Carthage for a dower convey. Then Venus, who her hidden fraud descried, which would the scepter of the world misguide to Libyan shores, thus artfully replied: Who but a fool would wars with Juno choose, and such alliance and such gifts refuse, if fortune with our joint desires comply? The doubt is all from Jove and destiny, lest he forbid with absolute command to mix the people in one common land. Or will the Trojan and the Tyrian line in lasting leagues ensure succession join? But you, the partner of his bed and throne, may move his mind. My wishes are your own. Mine, said imperial Juno, be the care. Time urges now to perfect this affair. Attend my counsel and the secret share. When next the sun his rising light displays, and gilds the world below with purple rays, the queen, Aeneas, and the Tyrian court shall to the shady woods for sylvan game resort. There, while the huntsmen pitch their toils around, and cheerful horns from side to side resound, a pitchy cloud shall cover all the plain, with hail and thunder and tempestuous rain. The fearful train shall take their speedy flight, dispersed and all involved in gloomy night. One cave a grateful shelter shall afford to the fair princess and the Trojan lord. I will myself the bridal bed prepare, if you, to bless the nuptials, will be there. So shall their loves be crowned with due delights, and Hymen shall be present at the rites. The Queen of Love consents, and closely smiles at her vain project and discovered wiles. The rosy morn is risen from the main, and horns and hounds awake the princely train. They issue early through the city gate, where the more wakeful huntsmen ready wait, with nets and toils and darts, beside the force of Spartan dogs and swift Massilian horse. The Tyrian peers and officers of state for the slow queen in antechambers wait. Her lofty courser in the court below, who his majestic rider seems to know, proud of his purple trappings, paws the ground, and champs the golden bit and spreads the foam around. The queen at length appears. On either hand the brawny guards in martial order stand. A flowered simar with golden fringe she wore, and at her back a golden quiver bore. Her flowing hair a golden caul restrains, a golden clasp the Tyrian robe sustains. Then young Ascanius, with a sprightly grace, leads on the Trojan youth to view the chase. But far above the rest in beauty shines the great Aeneas. The troop he joins, like fair Apollo when he leaves the frost of wintry Xanthus and the Lycian coast, when to his native Delos he resorts, ordains the dances and renews the sports, where painted Scythians, mix'd with Cretan bands, before the joyful altars join their hands. Himself, on Cynthus walking, sees below the merry madness of the sacred show. Green wreaths of bays his length of hair enclose, a golden fillet binds his awful brows. His quiver sounds, Not less the prince is seen in manly presence, or in lofty mien. Now had they reach'd the hills, and storm'd the seat of savage beasts, in dens, their last retreat. The cry pursues the mountain goats, they bound from rock to rock, and keep the craggy ground. Quite otherwise the stags, a trembling train, in herds unsingled scour the dusty plain, and a long chase in open view maintain. The glad Ascanius, as his courser guides, spurs through the vale, and these and those outrides. His horse's flanks and sides are forced to feel the clanking lash and goring of the steel. Impatiently he views the feeble prey, wishing some nobler beast to cross his way, and rather would the tusky boar attend, or see the tawny lion downward bend. Meantime the gathering clouds obscure the skies. From pole to pole the forky lightning flies. The rattling thunders roll, and Juno pours a wintry deluge down, and sounding showers. The company disperse to coverts ride, and seek the homely cots or mountain's hollow side. The rapid rains, descending from the hills, to rolling torrents raise the creeping rills. The queen and prince, as love or fortune guides, one common cavern in her bosom hides. Then first the trembling earth the signal gave, and flashing fires enlighten all the cave. Hell from below, and Juno from above, and howling nymphs were conscious of their love. From this ill-omened hour in time arose debate and death, and all succeeding woes. The queen, whom sense of honour could not move, no longer made a secret of her love, but called it marriage, by that specious name to veil the crime and sanctify the shame. The loud report through Libyan cities goes, fame, the great ill, from small beginnings grows. Swift from the first, and every moment brings new vigour to her flights, new pinions to her wings. Soon grows the pygmy to gigantic size, her feet on earth, her forehead in the skies. Enraged against the gods, revengeful earth produced her, last of the Titanian birth. Swift is her walk, more swift her winged haste, a monstrous phantom, horrible and vast. As many plumes as raise her lofty flight, so many piercing eyes enlarge her sight. Millions of opening mouths to fame belong, and every mouth is furnished with a tongue. And round with listening ears the flying plague is hung. She fills the peaceful universe with cries, no slumbers ever close her wakeful eyes. By day from lofty towers her head she shows, and spreads through trembling crowds disastrous news, with court informers haunts, and royal spies. Things done relates, not done she feigns, and mingles truth with lies. Talk is her business, and her chief delight, to tell of prodigies and cause affright. She fills the people's ears with Dido's name, who, lost to honour and the sense of shame, admits into her throne and nuptial bed a wandering guest, who from his country fled. Whole days with him she passes in delights, and wastes in luxury long winter nights, forgetful of her fame and royal trust, dissolved in ease, abandoned to her lust. The goddess widely spreads the loud report, and flies at length to King Hyarbas' court. When first possessed with this unwelcome news, whom did he not of men and gods accuse? This prince, from ravish'd Garamantis born, 100 temples did with spoils adorn in Ammon's honour, his celestial sire. 100 altars fed with wakeful fire, and through his vast dominions priests ordained, whose watchful care these holy rites maintained. The gates and columns were with garlands crowned, and blood of victim beasts enriched the ground. He, when he heard a fugitive could move the Tyrian princess who disdained his love, his breast with fury burned, his eyes with fire, mad with despair, impatient with desire. Then on the sacred altars pouring wine, he thus with prayers implored his sire divine. Great Jove, propitious to the Moorish race, who feast on painted beds, with offerings grace thy temples, and adore thy power divine with blood of victims, and with sparkling wine, seest thou not this? Or do we fear in vain thy boasted thunder and thy thoughtless rain? Do thy broad hands the forky lightnings lance? Thine are the bolts or the blind work of chance? A wandering woman builds within our state a little town bought at an easy rate. She pays me homage, and my grants allow a narrow space of Libyan lands to plough. Yet, scorning me, by passion blindly led, admits a banished Trojan to her bed. And now this other Paris, with his train of conquered cowards, must in Afric reign, whom, what they are, their looks and garbs confess, their locks with oil perfumed, their Lydian dress. He takes the spoil, enjoys the princely dame, and I, rejected I, adore an empty name. His vows in haughty terms he thus preferr'd, and held his altar's horns. The mighty Thunderer heard, then cast his eyes on Carthage, where he found the lustful pair in lawless pleasure drown'd, lost in their loves, insensible of shame, and both forgetful of their better fame. He calls Silenius, and the god attends, by whom his menacing command he sends. Go, mount the western winds and cleave the sky, then with a swift descent to Carthage fly. There find the Trojan chief, who wastes his days in slothful riot and inglorious ease, nor minds the future city given by fate. To him this message from my mouth relate: Not so fair Venus hoped, when twice she won thy life with prayers, nor promised such a son. Hers was a hero, destined to command a martial race and rule the Latian land, who should his ancient line from Teucer draw, and on the conquered world impose the law. If glory cannot move a mind so mean, nor future praise from fading pleasure wean, yet why should he defraud his son of fame, and grudge the Romans their immortal name? What are his vain designs? What hopes he more from his long lingering on a hostile shore, regardless to redeem his honour lost, and for his race to gain the Ausonian coast? Bid him with speed the Tyrian court forsake. With this command the slumbering warrior wake. Hermes obeys. With golden pinions binds his flying feet, and mounts the western winds. And whether o'er the seas or earth he flies, with rapid force they bear him down the skies. But first he grasps within his awful hand that mark of sovereign power, his magic wand. With this he draws the ghosts from hollow graves, with this he drives them down the Stygian waves, with this he seals in sleep the wakeful sight, and eyes, though closed in death, restores to light. Thus armed, the god begins his airy race, and drives the racking clouds along the liquid space. Now sees the tops of Atlas as he flies, whose brawny back supports the starry skies. Atlas, whose head with piney forests crowned, is beaten by the winds, with foggy vapours bound. Snows hide his shoulders. From beneath his chin the founts of rolling streams their race begin. A beard of ice on his large breast depends. Here, poised upon his wings, the god descends. Then rested thus he from the towering height, plunged downward with precipitated flight, lights on the seas, and skims along the flood, as waterfowl who seek their fishy food, less and yet less to distant prospect show. By turns they dance aloft and dive below. Like these the steerage of his wings he plies, and near the surface of the water flies, till, having passed the seas and crossed the sands, he closed his wings and stooped on Libyan lands. Where shepherds once were housed in homely sheds, now towers within the clouds advance their heads. Arriving there, he found the Trojan prince new ramparts raising for the town's defence. A purple scarf with gold embroidered o'er, Queen Dido's gift, about his waist he wore. A sword, with glittering gems diversified, for ornament, not use, hung idly by his side. Then thus, with winged words, the god began, resuming his own shape. Degenerate man, thou woman's property, what makest thou here, these foreign walls and Tyrian towers to rear, forgetful of thy own? All-powerful Jove, who sways the world below and heaven above, has sent me down with this severe command. What means thy lingering in the Libyan land? If glory cannot move a mind so mean, nor future praise from flitting pleasure wean, regard the fortunes of thy rising heir. The promised crown let young Ascanius wear, to whom th' Ausonian sceptre and the state of Rome's imperial name is owed by fate. So spoke the god, and speaking, took his flight, involved in clouds, and vanish'd out of sight. The pious prince was seized with sudden fear. Mute was his tongue, and upright stood his hair. Revolving in his mind the stern command, he longs to fly, and loathes the charming land. What should he say, or how should he begin? What course, alas, remains to steer between the offended lover and the powerful queen? This way and that he turns his anxious mind, and all expedients tries, and none can find. Fix'd on the deed, but doubtful of the means, after long thought, to this advice he leans. 3 chiefs he calls, commands them to repair the fleet, and ship their men with silent care. Some plausible pretence he bids them find, to colour what in secret he design'd. Himself, meantime, the softest hours would choose, before the love-sick lady heard the news, and move her tender mind by slow degrees to suffer what the sovereign pow'r decrees. Jove will inspire him when and what to say. They hear with pleasure, and with haste obey. But soon the queen perceives the thin disguise. What arts can blind a jealous woman's eyes? She was the first to find the secret fraud, before the fatal news was blazed abroad. Love the first motions of the lover hears, quick to presage, and even in safety fears. Nor impious fame was wanting to report the ships repaired, the Trojans' thick resort, and purpose to forsake the Tyrian court. Frantic with fear, impatient of the wound, and impotent of mind, she roves the city round. Less wild the Bacchanalian games appear, when from afar their nightly god they hear, and howl about the hills, and shake the wreathy spear. At length she finds the dear perfidious man, prevents his form'd excuse, and thus began. Base and ungrateful! Could you hope to fly, and undiscover'd scape a lover's eye? Nor could my kindness your compassion move, nor plighted vows, nor dearer bands of love? Or is the death of a despairing queen not worth preventing, though too well foreseen? Even when the wintry winds command your stay, you dare the tempests and defy the sea. False as you are, suppose you were not bound to lands unknown and foreign coasts to sound. Were Troy restored and Priam's happy reign, now durst you tempt for Troy the raging main? See whom you fly! Am I the foe you shun? Now, by those holy vows so late begun, by this right hand, since I have nothing more to challenge but the faith you gave before, I beg you, by these tears too truly shed, by the new pleasures of our nuptial bed, if ever Dido, when he most were kind, was pleasing in your eyes, or touched your mind, by these my prayers, if prayers may yet have place, pity the fortunes of a falling race. For you I have provoked a tyrant's hate, incensed the Libyan and the Tyrian state. For you alone I suffer in my fame, bereft of honour and exposed to shame. Whom have I now to trust, ungrateful guest? That only name remains of all the rest. What have I left? Or whither can I fly? Must I attend Pygmalion's cruelty, or till Hyarba shall in triumph lead a queen that proudly scorn'd his proffered bed? Had you deferr'd at least your hasty flight, and left behind some pledge of our delight, some babe to bless thy mother's mournful sight, some young Aeneas to supply your place, whose features might express his father's face, I should not then complain to live bereft of all my husband, or be wholly left.
Come and get me.
End of Book 4, Part 1. Book 4, Part 2 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Philippa Jevons. The Aeneid by Publius Virgilius Maro, translated by John Dryden. Book 4, The Passion of the Queen, Part 2. Here paused the Queen. Unmoved he holds his eyes by Jove's command, nor suffered love to rise, though heaving in his heart, and thus at length replies: Fair Queen, you never can enough repeat your boundless favours, or I own my debt, nor can my mind forget Eliza's name, while vital breath inspires this mortal frame. This only let me speak in my defence: I never hoped a secret flight from hence, much less pretended to the lawful claim of sacred nuptials or a husband's name. For if indulgent heaven would leave me free, and not submit my life to fate's decree, my choice would lead me to the Trojan shore, those relics to review, their dust adore, and Priam's ruined palace to restore. But now the Delphian oracle commands, and fate invites me to the Latian lands. That is the promised place to which I steer, and all my vows are terminated there. If you, a Tyrian and a stranger born, with walls and towers a Libyan town adorn, why may not we, like you, a foreign race, like you, seek shelter in a foreign place? As often as the night obscures the skies with humid shades, or twinkling stars arise, Anchises' angry ghost in dreams appears, chides my delay, and fills my soul with fears. And young Ascanius justly may complain, defrauded of his fate and destined reign. Even now the herald of the gods appeared. Waking I saw him, and his message heard. From Jove he came, commissioned heavenly bright, with radiant beams, and manifest to sight. The sender and the sent I both attest. These walls he entered, and those words expressed: Fair Queen, oppose not what the gods command. Forced by my fate, I leave your happy land. Thus while he spoke, already she began with sparkling eyes to view the guilty man. From head to foot surveyed his person o'er, nor longer these outrageous threats forbore. False as thou art, and more than false, forsworn, not sprung from noble blood, nor goddess born, but hewn from hardened entrails of a rock, and rough Hyrcanian tigers gave thee suck. Why should I fawn? What have I worse to fear? Did he once look, or lent a listening ear, sighed when I sobbed, or shed one kindly tear? All symptoms of a base, ungrateful mind, so foul that, which is worse, 'tis hard to find. Of man's injustice why should I complain? The gods and Jove himself behold in vain triumphant treason, yet no thunder flies, nor Juno views my wrongs with equal eyes. Faithless is earth, and faithless are the skies. Justice is fled, and truth is now no more. I saved the shipwrecked exile on my shore, with needful food his hungry Trojans fed. I took the traitor to my throne and bed. Fool that I was! 'Tis little to repeat the rest. I stored and rigg'd his ruin'd fleet. I rave, I rave. A god's command he pleads, and makes heaven accessory to his deeds. Now Lycian lots, and now the Delian god, now Hermes is employ'd from Jove's abode to warn him hence, as if the peaceful state of heavenly powers were touch'd with human fate. But go, thy flight no longer I detain. Go, seek thy promis'd kingdom through the main. Yet, if the heavens will hear my pious vow, the faithless waves, not half so false as thou, or secret sands shall sepulchres afford to thy proud vessels, and their perjur'd lord. Then shalt thou call on injur'd Dido's name. Dido shall come in a black sulphury flame, when death has once dissolved her mortal frame, shall smile to see the traitor vainly weep. Her angry ghost, arising from the deep, shall haunt thee waking, and disturb thy sleep. At least my shade thy punishment shall know, and fame shall spread the pleasing news below. Abruptly here she stops, then turns away her loathing eyes, and shuns the sight of day. Amazed he stood, revolving in his mind what speech to frame, and what excuse to find. Her fearful maids their fainting mistress led, and softly laid her on her ivory bed. But good Aeneas, though he much desir'd to give that pity which her grief required, though much he mourn'd and labour'd with his love, resolved at length, obeys the will of Jove, reviews his forces. They with early care unmoor their vessels, and for sea prepare. The fleet is soon afloat in all its pride, and well-caulk'd galleys in the harbour ride. Then oaks for oars they fell'd, or, as they stood, of its green arms despoil'd the growing wood, studious of flight. The beach is cover'd o'er with Trojan bands that blacken all the shore. On every side are seen, descending down, thick swarms of soldiers loaden from the town. Thus in battalia march embodied ants, fearful of winter and of future wants, to invade the corn, and to their cells convey the plunder'd forage of their yellow prey. The sable troops along the narrow tracks scarce bear the weighty burden on their backs. Some set their shoulders to the ponderous grain, some guard the spoil, some lash the lagging train. All ply their several tasks, and equal toil sustain. What pangs the tender breast of Dido bore, when from the tower she saw the covered shore, and heard the shouts of sailors from afar, mixed with the murmurs of the watery war. All-powerful love, what changes canst thou cause in human hearts subjected to thy laws? Once more her haughty soul the tyrant bends, to prayers and mean submission she descends. No female arts or aid she left untried, nor counsels unexplored, before she died. Look, Anna, look, the Trojans crowd to sea. They spread their canvas and their anchors wave. The shouting crew their ships with garlands bind, invoke the sea gods and invite the wind. Could I have thought this threatening blow so near, my tender soul had been forewarned to bear. But do not you my last request deny, with yon perfidious man your interest try, and bring me news, if I must live or die. You are his favourite, you alone can find the dark recesses of his inmost mind. In all his trusted secrets you have part, and know the soft approaches to his heart. Haste then, and humbly seek my haughty foe. Tell him, I did not with the Grecians go, nor did my fleet against his friends employ, nor swore the ruin of unhappy Troy, nor moved with hands profane his father's dust. Why should he then reject a suit so just? Whom does he shun, and whither would he fly? Can he this last, this only prayer deny? Let him at least his dangerous flight delay, wait better winds, and hope a calmer sea. The nuptials he disclaims I urge no more. Let him pursue the promised Latian shore. A short delay is all I ask him now, a pause of grief, an interval from woe. till my soft soul be temper'd to sustain accustom'd sorrows, and inur'd to pain. If you in pity grant this one request, my death shall glut the hatred of his breast." This mournful message pious Anna bears, and seconds with her own her sister's tears. But all her arts are still employ'd in vain. Again she comes, and is refus'd again. His harden'd heart nor pray'rs nor threat'nings move. Fate and the god had stopp'd his ears to love. As when the winds their airy quarrel try, Justling from every quarter of the sky, this way and that the mountain oak they bend, his boughs they shatter and his branches rend, with leaves and falling mast they spread the ground, the hollow valleys echo to the sound. Unmov'd the royal plant their fury mocks, or, shaken, clings more closely to the rocks. For as he shoots his towering head on high, so deep in earth his fix'd foundations lie. No less a storm the Trojan hero bears. Thick messages and loud complaints he hears, and bandied words still beating on his ears. Sighs, groans, and tears proclaim his inward pains, but the firm purpose of his heart remains. The wretched queen, pursued by cruel fate, begins at length the light of heaven to hate, and loathes to live. Then dire portents she sees, to hasten on the death her soul decrees. Strange to relate! For when, before the shrine, she pours in sacrifice the purple wine is turn'd to putrid blood, and the white offer'd milk converts to mud. This dire presage to her alone reveal'd, from all, and ev'n her sister, she conceal'd. A marble temple stood within the grove, sacred to death and to her murder'd love. That honour'd chapel she had hung around with snowy fleeces, and with garlands crown'd. Oft, when she visited this lonely dome, strange voices issued from her husband's tomb. She thought she heard him summon her away, invite her to his grave, and chide her stay. Hourly 'tis heard, when with a boding note the solitary screech owl strains her throat, and on a chimney's top or turret's height with songs obscene disturbs the silence of the night. Besides, old prophecies augment her fears, and stern Aeneas in her dreams appears, disdainful as by day. She seems alone to wander in her sleep through ways unknown, guideless and dark, or in a desert plain to seek her subjects, and to seek in vain. Like Pentheus, when, distracted with his fear, he saw two suns and double Thebes appear, or mad Orestes, when his mother's ghost full in his face infernal torches tossed, and shook her snaky locks. He shuns the sight, flies o'er the stage, surprised with mortal fright. The Furies guard the door, and intercept his flight. Now, sinking underneath a load of grief, from death alone she seeks her last relief. The time and means resolved within her breast, she to her mournful sister thus addressed. Dissembling hope, her cloudy front she clears, and a false vigour in her eyes appears. "Rejoice," she said, "instructed from above, my lover I shall gain, or lose my love. Nigh rising Atlas, next the falling sun, long tracts of Ethiopian climates run. There a Massilian priestess I have found, honour'd for age, for magic arts renowned. The Hesperian temple was her trusted care, 'twas she supplied the wakeful dragon's fare. She poppy seeds in honey taught to steep, reclaim'd his rage, and soothed him into sleep. She watch'd the golden fruit. Her charms unbind the chains of love, or fix them on the mind. She stops the torrents, leaves the channel dry, repels the stars, and backwards bears the sky. The yawning earth rebellows to her call, pale ghosts ascend, and mountain ashes fall. Witness, ye gods, and thou my better part, how loath I am to try this impious art. Within the secret court with silent care erect a lofty pile exposed in air. hang on the topmost part the Trojan vest, spoils, arms, and presents of my faithless guest. Next, under those the bridal bed be placed, where I my ruin in his arms embraced. All relics of the wretch are doomed to fire, for so the priestess and her charms require. Thus far she said, and farther speech forbears. A mortal paleness in her face appears. Yet the mistrustless Anna could not find the secret funeral in these rites designed, nor thought so dire a rage possessed her mind. Unknowing of a train concealed so well, she feared no worse than when Sichaeus fell, therefore obeys. The fatal pile they rear within the secret court, exposed in air. The cloven holms and pines are heaped on high, and garlands on the hollow spaces lie. Sad cypress, vervain, yew compose the wreath, and every baleful green denoting death. The queen, determined to the fatal deed, the spoils and sword he left in order spread, and the man's image on the nuptial bed. And now, the sacred altars placed around, the priestess enters, with her hair unbound, and thrice invokes the powers below the ground. Night, Erebus, and Chaos she proclaims, and threefold Hecate with her 100 names, and 3 Dianas. Next she sprinkles round with feigned Avernian drops the hallowed ground. Culls hoary simples found by Phoebe's light, with brazen sickles reaped at noon of night. Then mixes baleful juices in the bowl, and cuts the forehead of a newborn foal, robbing the mother's love. The destined queen observes, assisting at the rites obscene. A leavened cake in her devoted hands she holds, and next the highest altar stands. One tender foot was shod, the other bare. Girt was her gathered gown, and loose her hair. Thus dressed, she summoned with her dying breath the heavens and planets conscious of her death, and every power, if any rules above, who minds or who revenges injured love. 'Twas dead of night, when weary bodies close their eyes in balmy sleep and soft repose. The winds no longer whisper through the woods, nor murmuring tides disturb the gentle floods. The stars in silent order moved around, and peace with downy wings was brooding on the ground. The flocks and herds and party-coloured fowl which haunt the woods or swim the weedy pool, stretched on the quiet earth securely lay, forgetting the past labours of the day. All else of nature's common gift partake. Unhappy Dido was alone awake. Nor sleep nor ease the furious queen can find. Sleep fled her eyes as quiet fled her mind. Despair and rage and love divide her heart. Despair and rage had some, but love the greater part. Then thus she said within her secret mind, "What shall I do? What succour can I find? Become a suppliant to Yarba's pride, and take my turn to court and be denied? Shall I with this ungrateful Trojan go, forsake an empire and attend a foe? Himself I refuged and his train relieved, 'tis true, but am I sure to be received? Can gratitude in Trojan souls have place? Laomedon still lives in all his race. Or shall I seek alone the churlish crew, or with my fleet their flying sails pursue? What force have I but those whom scarce before I drew reluctant from their native shore? Will they again embark at my desire, once more sustain the seas, and quit their second Tyre? Rather with steel thy guilty breast invade, and take the fortune thou thyself hast made. Your pity, sister, first seduced my mind, or seconded too well what I designed. These dear-bought pleasures had I never known, had I continued free and still my own, avoiding love, I had not found despair, but shared with savage beasts the common air. Like them, a lonely life I might have led, not mourned the living, nor disturbed the dead. These thoughts she brooded in her anxious breast. On board the Trojan found more easy rest. Resolved to sail, in sleep he passed the night, and ordered all things for his early flight. To whom once more the winged god appears, his former youthful mien and shape he wears, and with this new alarm invades his ears. Sleep'st thou, O goddess born? And canst thou drown thy needful cares so near a hostile town, beset with foes? Nor hear'st the western gales invite thy passage and inspire thy sails? She harbours in her heart a furious hate, and thou shalt find the dire effects too late. Fix'd on revenge and obstinate to die, haste swiftly hence whilst thou hast power to fly. The sea with ships will soon be cover'd o'er, and blazing firebrands kindle all the shore. Prevent her rage while night obscures the skies, and sail before the purple morn arise. Who knows what hazards thy delay may bring? Woman's a various and a changeful thing. Thus Hermes in the dream, then took his flight aloft in air unseen, and mix'd with night. Twice warned by the celestial messenger, the pious prince arose with hasty fear, then roused his drowsy train without delay. Haste to your banks, your crooked anchors weigh, and spread your flying sails, and stand to sea. A god commands, he stood before my sight, and urged us once again to speedy flight. O sacred power, what power soe'er thou art, to thy blest orders I resign my heart. Lead thou the way, protect thy Trojan bands, and prosper the design thy will commands. He said, and drawing forth his flaming sword, his thund'ring arm divides the many-twisted cord. An emulating zeal inspires his train, they run, they snatch, they rush into the main. With headlong haste they leave the desert shores, and brush the liquid seas with labouring oars. Aurora now had left her saffron bed, and beams of early light the heavens o'erspread, when from a tower the queen with wakeful eyes saw day point upwards from the rosy skies. She looked to seaward, the sea was void, and scarce in ken the sailing ships descried. Stung with despite and furious with despair, she struck her trembling breast and tore her hair. And shall the ungrateful traitor go, she said, my land forsaken and my love betray'd? Shall we not arm, not rush from every street, to follow, sink, and burn his perjur'd fleet? Haste, haul my galleys out, pursue the foe, bring flaming brands, set sail, and swiftly row. What have I said? Where am I? Fury turns my brain, and my distemper'd bosom burns. Then, when I gave my person and my throne, this hate, this rage had been more timely shown. See now the promised faith, the vaunted name, the pious man who, rushing through the flame, preserved his gods, and to the Phrygian shore the burthen of his feeble father bore. I should have torn him piecemeal, strow'd in floods his scattered limbs, or left exposed in woods, destroyed his friends and son, and from the fire have set the reeking boy before the sire. Events are doubtful which on battles wait, yet where's the doubt to souls secure of fate? My Tyrians at their injured queen's command had tossed their fires amid the Trojan band, at once extinguished all the faithless name, and I myself in vengeance of my shame had fallen upon the pile to mend the funeral flame. Thou sun, who view'st at once the world below, thou Juno, guardian of the nuptial vow, thou Hecate, hearken from thy dark abodes. Ye Furies, fiends, and violated gods, all powers invoked with Dido's dying breath, attend her curses and avenge her death. If so the fates ordain, Jove commands, the ungrateful wretch should find the Latian lands. Yet let a race untamed and haughty foes his peaceful entrance with dire arms oppose. Oppressed with numbers in the unequal field, his men discouraged and himself expelled, let him for succour sue from place to place, torn from his subjects and his son's embrace. First, let him see his friends in battle slain, and their untimely fate lament in vain. And when at length the cruel war shall cease, on hard conditions may he bide his peace. Nor let them then enjoy supreme command, but fall untimely by some hostile hand, and lie unburied on the barren sand. These are my prayers, and this my dying will, and you, my Tyrians, every curse fulfil. Perpetual hate and mortal wars proclaim against the prince, the people, and the name. These grateful offerings on my grave bestow, nor league nor love the hostile nations know. Now and from hence, in every future age, when rage excites your arms and strength supplies the rage, rise some avenger of our Libyan blood, with fire and sword pursue the perjured brood. Our arms, our seas, our shores opposed to theirs, and the same hate descend on all our heirs. This said, within her anxious mind she weighs the means of cutting short her odious days. Then to Sichaeus' nurse she briefly said, for when she left her country hers was dead, "Go, Barce, call my sister. Let her care the solemn rites of sacrifice prepare, the sheep and all the atoning offerings bring. Sprinkling her body from the crystal spring with living drops, then let her come, and thou with sacred fillets bind thy hoary brow. Thus will I pay my vows to Stygian Jove, and end the cares of my disastrous love. Then cast the Trojan image on the fire, and as that burns my passions shall expire." The nurse moves onward, with officious care, and all the speed her aged limbs can bear. But furious Dido, with dark thoughts involved, shook at the mighty mischief she resolved. With livid spots distinguished was her face, red were her rolling eyes, and discomposed her pace. Ghastly she gazed, with pain she drew her breath, and nature shivered at approaching death. Then swiftly to the fatal place she passed, and mounts the funeral pile with furious haste. Unsheathes the sword the Trojan left behind, not for so dire an enterprise designed. But when she viewed the garments loosely spread which once he wore, and saw the conscious bed, she paused, and with a sigh the robes embraced. Then on the couch her trembling body cast, repressed the ready tears, and spoke her last. "Dear pledges of my love, while heav'n so pleas'd, receive a soul of mortal anguish eas'd. My fatal course is finish'd, and I go, a glorious name, among the ghosts below. A lofty city by my hands is rais'd, Pygmalion punish'd, and my lord appeas'd. What could my fortune have afforded more, had the false Trojan never touch'd my shore?" Then kiss'd the couch, and "Must I die," she said, "and unreveng'd? 'Tis doubly to be dead. Yet ev'n this death with pleasure I receive; on any terms 'tis better than to live. These flames from far may the false Trojan view, these boding omens his base flight pursue." She said, and struck. Deep enter'd in her side the piercing steel, with reeking purple dyed. Clogg'd in the wound the cruel weapon stands, the spouting blood came streaming on her hands. Her sad attendants saw the deadly stroke, and with loud cries the sounding palace shook. Distracted from the fatal sight they fled, and through the town the dismal rumour spread. First from the frighted court the yell began, redoubled thence from house to house it ran. The groans of men, with shrieks, laments, and cries of mixing women, mount the vaulted skies. Not less the clamour than if ancient Tyre, or the new Carthage, set by foes on fire. The rolling ruin, with their lov'd abodes, involv'd the blazing temples of their gods.
Well, I want yours too.
Her sister hears, and furious with despair, she beats her breast, and rends her yellow hair, and calling on Eliza's name aloud, runs breathless to the place. and breaks the crowd. Was all that pomp of woe for this prepared? These fires, this funeral pile, these altars rear'd? Was all this train of plots contrived, said she, all only to deceive unhappy me? Which is the worst? Didst thou in death pretend to scorn thy sister, or delude thy friend? Thy summoned sister and thy friend had come. One sword had served us both, one common tomb. Was I to raise the pile the powers invoke, not to be present at the fatal stroke? At once thou hast destroyed thyself and me, thy town, thy senate, and thy colony. Bring water, bathe the wound, while I in death lay close my lips to hers and catch the flying breath. This said, she mounts the pile with eager haste, and in her arms the gasping queen embraced. Her temples chafed, and her own garments tore to staunch the streaming blood and cleanse the gore. Thrice Dido tried to raise her drooping head, and fainting thrice fell grovelling on the bed. Thrice oped her heavy eyes and sought the light, but having found it, sickened at the sight, and closed her lids at last in endless night. Then Juno, grieving that she should sustain a death so lingering and so full of pain, sent Iris down to free her from the strife of labouring nature and dissolve her life. For since she died, not doomed by heaven's decree of her own crime, but human casualty and rage of love that plunged her in despair, the sisters had not cut the topmost hair which Proserpine and they can only know, nor made her sacred to the shades below. Downward the various goddess took her flight, and drew 1,000 colours from the light, then stood above the dying lover's head, and said, I thus devote him to the dead. This offering to the infernal gods I bear. Thus while she spoke, she cut the fatal hair. The struggling soul was loosed, and life dissolved in air. End of Book 4.
Book 5, Part 1 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Joseph Earle, Falls Church, Virginia. The Aeneid by Publius Virgilius Maro, translated by John Dryden. Book 5, Games in a Conflagration, Part 1. Meantime, the Trojan cuts his watery way, fixed on his voyage through the curling sea. Then, casting back his eyes with dire amaze, sees on the Punic shore the mounting blaze. The cause unknown, yet his presaging mind the fate of Dido from the fire divined. He knew the stormy souls of womankind, what secret springs their eager passions move, how capable of death for injured love. Dire auguries from thence the Trojans draw, till neither fires nor shining shores they saw. Now seas and skies their prospect only bound, an empty space above, a floating field around. But soon the heavens with shadows were o'erspread, a swelling cloud hung hovering o'er their head. Livid it looked, the threatening of a storm, Then night and horror ocean's face deform. The pilot, Palinurus, cried aloud, "What gusts of weather from that gathering cloud my thoughts presage? Ere yet the tempest roars, stand to your tackle, mates, and stretch your oars. Contract your swelling sails and luff to wind." The frighted crew performed the task assigned. Then to his fearless chief, "Not heaven," said he, "though Jove himself should promise Italy, can stem the torrent of this raging sea. Mark how the shifting winds from west arise, and what collected night involves the sky. Nor can our shaken vessels live at sea, much less against the tempest force their way. 'Tis fate diverts our course, and fate we must obey. Not far from hence, if I observed aright the southing of the stars and polar light, Sicilia lies, whose hospitable shores in safety we may reach with struggling oars." Aeneas then replied, "Too sure I find we strive in vain against the seas and wind. Now shift your sails. What place can please me more than what you promise, the Sicilian shore, whose hallowed earth Anchises' bone contains, and where a prince of Trojan lineage reigns." The course resolved, before the western wind they scud amain and make the port a sign. Meanwhile Acestes from a lofty stand beheld the fleet descending on the land, and, not unmindful of his ancient race, down from the cliff he ran with eager pace, and held the hero in a strict embrace. Of a rough Libyan bear the spoils he wore, and either hand a pointed javelin bore. His mother was a dame of Dardan blood, his sire Crinisus, a Sicilian flood. He welcomes his returning friends ashore, with plenteous country cates and homely store. Now, when the following morn had chased away the flying stars, and light restored the day, Aeneas called the Trojan troops around, and thus bespoke them from a rising ground. "Offspring of heav'n, divine Dardanian race, the sun revolving through the ethereal space, the shining circle of the year has filled, since first this isle my father's ashes held. And now the rising day renews the year, a day forever sad, forever dear. This would I celebrate with annual games, with gifts on altars piled, and holy flames, though banished to Gaetulia's barren sands, caught on the Grecian seas or hostile lands. But since this happy storm our fleet has driven, not, as I deem, without the will of heaven, upon these friendly shores and flowery plains, which hide Anchises and his blessed remains, let us with joy perform his honours due, and pray for prosperous winds our voyage to renew. Pray that in towns and temples of our own the name of great Anchises may be known, and yearly games may spread the gods' renown. Our sports, Acestes of the Trojan race, with royal gifts ordained is pleased to grace. 2 steers on every ship the king bestows, his gods and ours shall share your equal vows. Besides, if, 9 days hence, the rosy morn shall with unclouded light the skies adorn, that day with solemn sports I mean to grace. Light galleys on the seas shall run a wat'ry race. Some shall in swiftness for the gold contend, and others try the twanging bow to bend. The strong with iron gauntlets arm'd shall stand, opposed in combat on the yellow sand. Let all be present at the games prepared, and joyful victors wait the just reward. But now assist the rites with garlands crowned. He said, and first his brows with myrtle bound, then Helymus by his example led, and old Acestes each adorned his head. Thus young Ascanius with a sprightly grace his temples tied, and all the Trojan race. Aeneas then advanced amidst the train, by thousands followed through the fruitful plain, to great Anchises' tomb, which when he found, he poured to Bacchus on the hallowed ground 2 bowls of sparkling wine, of milk 2 more, and 2 from offered bulls of purple gore. With roses then the sepulchre he strode, and thus his father's ghost spoke aloud. Hail, O ye holy mourners, hail again! Paternal ashes now reviewed in vain. The gods permitted not that you with me should reach the promised shores of Italy, or Tiber's flood, what flood soe'er it be. Scarce had he finished, when, with speckled pride, a serpent from the tomb began to glide. His huge bulk on 7 high volumes rolled. Blue was his breath of back, but streaked with gold. Thus, riding on his curls, he seemed to pass a rolling fire along and singe the grass. More various colors through his body run, than Iris with her bow imbibes the sun. Betwixt the rising altars and around, the sacred monster shot along the ground. With harmless play amidst the bowls he passed, and with his lolling tongue essayed the taste. Thus, fed with holy food, the wondrous guest within the hollow tomb retired to rest. The pious prince, surprised at what he viewed, the funeral honors with more zeal renewed. Doubtful if this the place's genius were, or guardian of his father's sepulchre. 2 sheep, according to the rites he slew, as many swine and steers of sable hue. New generous wine he from the goblets poured, and called his father's ghost from hell restored. The glad attendants in long order come, offering their gifts at great Anchises' tomb. Some add more oxen, some divide the spoil, some place the chargers on the grassy soil, some blow the fire, and offered entrails broil. Now came the day desired. The skies were bright with rosy luster of the rising light. The bordering people, roused by sounding fame of Trojan feasts and great Acestes' name, the crowded shore with acclamations fill, part to behold and part to prove their skill. And first the gifts in public view they place, green laurel wreaths and palm, the victor's grace. Within the circle arms and tripods lie, ingots of gold and silver heaped on high, and vests embroidered of the Tyrian dye. The trumpet's clangor then the feast proclaims, and all prepare for their appointed games. 4 galleys first with equal rowers bear, advancing in the watery lists appear. The speedy dolphin that outstrips the wind bore Menesthus, author of the Mamaean kind. Gyas the vast Chimera's bulk commands, which rising like a towering city stands. 3 Trojans tug at every laboring oar. 3 banks in 3 degrees the sailors bore. Beneath their sturdy strokes the billows roll. Sergestus, who began the surging race, in the great Centaur took the leading place. Cloanthus on the sea green Scylla stood, from whom Cluentius draws his Trojan blood. Far in the sea, against the foaming shore, there stands a rock. The raging billows roar above his head in storms. But when 'tis clear, uncurl their ridgy backs, and at his foot appear. In peace below the gentle waters run, the cormorants above lie basking in the sun. On this the hero fix'd an oak in sight, the mark to guide the mariners aright. To bear with this, the seamen stretch their oars, then round the rock they steer, and seek the former shore. The lots decide their place. Above the rest, each leader shining in his Tyrian vest, the common crew with wreaths of poplar boughs their temples crown and shade their sweaty brows. Besmear'd with oil their naked shoulders shine, all take their seats and wait the sounding sign. They grip their oars, and every panting breast is raised by turns by hope, by turns with fear depressed. The clangor of the trumpet gives the sign. At once they start, advancing in a line. With shouts the sailors rend the starry skies, lash'd with their oars the smoky billows rise. Sparkles the briny main, and the vexed ocean fries. Exact in time, with equal strokes they row. At once the brushing oars and brazen prow dash up the sandy waves, and ope the depths below. Not fiery coursers in a chariot race invade the field with half so swift a pace, nor the fierce driver with more fury lends the sounding lash, and ere the stroke descends, low to the wheels his pliant body bends. The partial crowd their hopes and fears divide, and aid with eager shouts the favour'd side. Cries, murmurs, clamours, with a mixing sound, from woods to woods, from hills to hills rebound. Amidst the loud applauses of the shore, Gyas outstripp'd the rest, and sprung before. Cloanthus, better mann'd, pursued him fast, but his o'er-masted galley check'd his haste. The Centaur and the Dolphin brush'd the brine with equal oars, advancing in a line. And now the mighty Centaur seems to lead, and now the speedy Dolphin gets at. Now board to board the rival vessels row, the billows lave the skies, and ocean groans below. They reach the mark. Proud Gyas and his train in triumph rode, the victors of the main. But, steering round, he charged his pilot's stand more close to shore, and skim along the sand. Let others bear to sea. Menoetes heard, but secret shells too cautiously he feared, and fearing sought the deep, and still aloof he steered. With louder cries the captain called again, "Bear to the rocky shore, and shun the main." He spoke, and speaking at his stern he saw the bold Cloanthus near the shelvings draw. Betwixt the mark and him the Scylla stood, and in a closer compass plow'd the flood. He passed the mark, and wheeling got before. Gyas blasphemed the gods, devoutly swore, cried out for anger, and his hair he tore. Mindless of others' lives, so high was grown his rising rage, and careless of his own. The trembling dotard to the deck he drew, then hoisted up, and overboard he threw. This done, he seized the helm, his fellows cheered, turned short upon the shelves, and madly steered. Hardly his head the plunging pilot rears, clogged with his clothes and cumbered with his years. Now, dripping wet, he climbs the cliff with pain. The crowd that saw him fall and float again shout from the distant shore, and loudly laugh to see his heaving breast disgorge the briny draught. The following Centaur and the Dolphin's crew their vanish'd hopes of victory renew. While Gyas lags, they kindle in the race. To reach the mark, Sergestus takes the place. Mnestheus pursues, and while around they wind, comes up, not half his galley's length behind. Then on the deck amidst his mates appear'd, and thus their drooping courage he cheer'd: "My friends, and Hector's followers heretofore, exert your vigour, tug the labouring oar. Stretch to your strokes, my still unconquer'd crew, whom from the flaming walls of Troy I drew. In this our common interest let me find, that strength of hand, that courage of the mind, as when you stem the strong Malayan flood, and o'er the Syrtes' broken billows roll. I seek not now the foremost palm to gain, though yet, but that haughty wish is vain. Let those enjoy it whom the gods ordain. But to be last, the lags of all the race, redeem yourselves and me from that disgrace." Now, one and all, they lug amain, they row at the full stretch, and shake the brazen prow. The sea beneath them sinks, their lab'ring sides are swell'd, and sweat runs guttering down in tides. Chance aids their daring with unhop'd success. Sergestus, eager with his beak to press betwixt the rival galley and the rock, shuts up the unwieldy Centaur in the lock. The vessel struck, and with the dreadful shock her oars she shiver'd, and her head she broke. The trembling rowers from their banks arise, and anxious for themselves renounce the prize. With iron poles they heave her off the shores, and gather from the sea their floating oars. The crew of Mnestheus with elated minds urge their success, and call the willing winds. Then ply their oars, and cut their liquid way in large compass on the roomy sea. As when the dove her rocky hole forsakes, rous'd in a fright, her sounding rings she shakes. The cavern rings with clattering, out she flies, and leaves her callow care, and cleaves the sky. At first she flutters, but at length she springs to smoother flight, and shoots upon her wings. So Mnestheus in the dolphin cuts the sea, and flying with a force, that force assists his way. Sergestus in the Centaur soon he passed, wedged in the rocky shoals, and sticking fast. In vain the victor he with cries implores, and practices to row with shattered oars. Then Mnestheus bears with Gyas, and outflies. The ship without a pilot yields the prize. Unvanquish'd Scylla now alone remains, her he pursues, and all his vigour strains. Shouts from the fav'ring multitude arise, applauding Echo to the shouts replies. Shouts, wishes, and applause run rattling through the skies. These clamours with disdain the Scylla heard, much grudg'd the praise, but more the robb'd reward. Resolv'd to hold their own, they mend their pace, all obstinate to die or gain the race. Rais'd with success, the dolphins swiftly ran, for they can conquer who believe they can. Both urge their oars, and fortune both supplies, and both perhaps had shared an equal prize, when to the seas Cloanthus holds his hands, and succour from the watery powers demand. Gods of the liquid realms on which I roam, if given by you the laurel bind my brow, assist to make me guilty of my vow. A snow-white bull shall on your shore be slain, his offered entrails cast into the main, and ruddy wine from golden goblets thrown, your grateful gift and my return shall know. The choir of nymphs and Phorcus from below, with virgin Panopia heard this vow. And old Portunus, with his breadth of hand, pushed on, and sped the galley to the land. Swift as a shaft, or winged wing she flies, and darting to the port, obtains the prize. The herald summons all, and then proclaims Cloanthus conqueror of the naval games. The prince with laurel crowns the victor's head, and 3 fat steers are to his vessel led, the ship's reward, with generous wine beside, and sums of silver which the crew divide. The leaders are distinguish'd from the rest, the victor honour'd with a nobler vest, where gold and purple strive in equal rows, and needlework its happy cost bestows. There Ganymede is wrought with the living heart, chasing through Ida's groves the trembling heart. Breathless he seems, yet eager to pursue, when from aloft descends in open view the bird of Jove, and sousing on his prey with crooked talons bears the boy away. In vain with lifted hands and gazing eyes his guards behold him soaring through the skies, and dogs pursue his flight with imitated cries. Mnestheus the second victor was declared, and summoned there the second prize he shared.
A coat of mail which brave Demoleus bore,
More brave Aeneas from his shoulders tore, in single combat on the Trojan shore. This was ordained for Mnestheus to possess, in war for his defense, for ornament in peace. Rich was the gift, and glorious to behold, but yet so ponderous with its weights of gold, that scarce 2 servants would the weight sustain. Yet, loaded thus, Demoleus o'er the plain pursued, and lightly seized the Trojan train. The third, succeeding to the last reward, 2 goodly bowls of massy silver shared, with figures prominent and richly wrought, and 2 brass cauldrons from Dodona brought.
thus all rewarded by the heroes' hands, their conquering temples bound with purple bands.
And now Sergestus, clearing from the rock, brought back his galley shattered with the shock. Forlorn she looked without an aiding oar, and booted by the vulgar made to shore. As when a snake, surprised upon the road, is crushed athwart her body by the load of heavy wheels, or with a mortal wound her belly bruised and trodden to the ground, in vain with loosened curls she crawls along, yet fierce above she brandishes her tongue, glares with her eyes, and bristles with her scales. But, groveling in the dust, her parts unsound she trails. So, slowly to the port the Centaur stands, but what she wants in oars with sails amends. Yet, for his galley saved, the grateful prince is pleased the unhappy chief to recompense. Pholoe, the Grecian slave, rewards his care, beauteous herself, with lovely twins as fair. From thence his way the Trojan hero bent into the neighbouring plain with mountains pent, whose sides were shaded with surrounding wood.
Full in the midst of this fair valley stood a native theatre,
which rising slow by just degrees, o'erlooked the ground below. High on a sylvan throne the leader sate, a numerous train attend in solemn state. Here those that in the rapid course delight, desire of honour and the prize invite. The rival runners without order stand, the Trojans mixed with the Sicilian band. First Nisus with Euryalus appears, Euryalus a boy of blooming years, with sprightly grace and equal beauty crowned.
Nisus for friendship to the youth renowned.
Diores next of Priam's royal race, then Salius joined with Patron took their place. But Patron in Arcadia had his birth, and Salius is from Acarnanian earth. When 2 Sicilian youths, the names of those, with Helymus and lovely Panopes, both jolly huntsmen, both in forest bred, and owning all Acestes for the head, and several others of ignobler name, whom time has not delivered o'er to fame. To these the hero thus his thoughts explained, in words with general approbation gained. One common largess is for all designed, the vanquished and the victor shall be joined. 2 darts of polished steel and Gnosian wood, a silver-studded axe alike bestowed. The foremost 3 have olive wreaths decreed. The first of these obtains a stately steed, adorned with trappings, and the next in fame the quiver of an Amazonian dame, with feathered Thracian arrows well supplied. A golden belt shall gird his manly side, which with a sparkling diamond shall be tied. The third this Grecian helmet shall content, he said. To their appointed base they went, with beating hearts the expected sign received, and starting all at once the barrier leave. Spread out as on the winged winds they flew, and seized the distant goal with greedy view. Shot from the crowd, swift Nisus all o'erpass'd, nor storms nor thunder equal half his haste. The next, but though the next yet far disjoined, came Salius and Euryalus behind. Then Helymus, who young Diores plied, step after step, and almost side by side, his shoulders pressing, and in longer space had won, or left at least a dubious race. Now spent, the goal they almost reach at last, when eager Nisus, hapless in his haste, slipped first, and slipping fell upon the plain, soaked with the blood of oxen newly slain. The careless victor had not marked his way, but treading where the treacherous puddle lay, his heels flew up, and on the grassy floor he fell, besmeared with filth and holy gold. Not mindless then Euryalus of me, nor of the sacred bonds of amity, he strove the immediate rival's hope to cross, and caught the foot of Salius as he rode. So Salius lay extended on the plain. Euryalus springs out the prize to gain, and leaves the crowd. Applauding peals attend the victor to his goal, who vanquished by his friend. Next Helymus, then Diores came, by 2 misfortunes made the third in fame. But Salius enters, and exclaiming loud for justice deafens and disturbs the crowd, urges his cause may in the court be heard, and pleads the prizes wrongfully conferred. But favor for Euryalus appears, his blooming beauty with his tender years had bribed the judges for the promised prize. Besides, Diores fills the court with cries, who vainly reaches at the last reward, if the first palm on Salius be conferred. And thus the prince: let no disputes arise, where fortune placed it, I award the prize. But fortune's errors give me leave to mend, at least to pity my deserving friend, he said. And from among the spoils he draws, ponderous with shaggy mane and golden paws, the lion's hide. To Salius this he gives. Nisus with envy sees the gift and grieves. If such rewards to vanquished men are due, he said, and falling is to rise by you, what prize may Nisus from your bounty claim, who merited first rewards and fame? In falling both an equal fortune tried, would fortune for my fall so well provide. With this he pointed to his face, and showed his hand and all his habit smeared with blood. The indulgent father of the people smiled, and caused to be produced an ample shield from wondrous arm. But Didymaon wrought, long since from Neptune's bars in triumph brought. This, given to Nisus, he divides the rest, and equal justice in his gifts expressed. The race thus ended, and rewards bestowed, once more the prince bespeaks the attentive crowd. If there be here whose dauntless courage dare in gauntlet fight with limbs and body bare, his opposite sustain helmet, stand forth the champion and the games renew. 2 prizes I propose, and thus divide: a bull with gilded horns and fillets tied shall be the portion of the conquering chief. A sword and helm shall cheer the loser's grief. Then haughty Dares in the lists appears. Stalking he strides, his head erected bears. His nervous arms the weighty gauntlet wield, and loud applauses echo through the field. Dares alone in combat used to stand the match of mighty Paris hand to hand. The same at Hector's funerals undertook gigantic Butes of the Amician stock, and by the stroke of his resistless hand stretched the vast bulk upon the yellow sand. Such Dares was, and such he strode along, and drew the wonder of the gazing throng. His brawny back and ample breast he shows, his lifted arms around his head he throws, and deals in whistling air his empty blows. His match is sought, but through the trembling band not one dares answer to the proud demand. Presuming of his force with sparkling eyes, already he devours the promised prize. He claims the bull with aweless insolence, and having seized his horns, accosts the prince. If none my matchless valor dares oppose, how long shall Dares wait his dastard foes? Permit me, chief, permit without delay to lead this uncontested gift away. The crowd assents, and with redoubled cries, for the proud challenger demands the prize. End of Book 5, Part 1.
You're going down. Don't get so cocky. Die.
Book 5, Part 2 of the Aeneid.
Give that to me.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Joseph Early, Falls Church, Virginia. The Aeneid by Publius Virgilius Maro. Translated by John Dryden. Book 5, Games and a Conflagration. Part 2. Acestes, fired with just disdain, to see the palm usurped without a victory, reproached Entellus thus, who sate beside and heard and saw unmoved the Trojans' pride. Once, but in vain, a champion of renown, so tamely can you bear the ravish'd crown. A prize in triumph borne before your sight, and shun for fear the danger of the fight? Where is our Eryx now, the boasted name, the god who taught your thund'ring arm the game? Where now your baffled honour? Where the spoil that fill'd your house, and fame that fill'd our isle? And tell us thus: my soul is still the same, unmov'd with fear, and mov'd with martial fame. But my chill blood is curdled in my veins, and scarce the shadow of a man remains. Oh, could I turn to that fair prime again, that prime of which this boaster is so vain! The brave, who this decrepit age defies, should feel my force without the promis'd prize. He said, and rising at the word, he threw 2 ponderous gauntlets down in open view. Gauntlets which Eryx wont in fight to wield, and sheath'd his hand with in the listed field. With fear and wonder seiz'd, the crowd beholds the gloves of death, with 7 distinguish'd folds of tough bull hides. The space within is spread with iron, or with loads of heavy lead. Dares himself was daunted at the sight, renounced his challenge, and refused to fight. Astonish'd at their weight, the hero stands, and poised the ponderous engines in his hands. What had your wonder, said Entellus, been, had you the gauntlets of Alcides seen, or view'd the stern debate on this unhappy green? These which I bear your brother Eryx bore, still mark'd with batter'd brains and mingled gore. With these he long sustained the Herculean arm, and these I wielded while my blood was warm. This languaged frame, while better spirits fed, ere age unstrung my nerves, or time o'ersnow'd my head. But if the challenger these arms refuse, and cannot wield their weight, or dare not use, if great Aeneas and Acestes join in his request, these gauntlets I resign. Let us with equal arms perform the fight, and let him leave to fare, since I resign my right. This said, Entellus for the strife prepares. Stripped of his quilted coat, his body bears. Composed of mighty bones and brawn he stands, a goodly towering object on the sands. Then just Aeneas equal arms supplied, which round their shoulders to their wrists they tied. Both on the tiptoe stand at full extent, their arms aloft, their bodies inly bent. Their heads from aiming blows they bear afar, with clashing gauntlets then provoke the war. One on his youth and pliant limbs relies, one on his sinews and his giant size. The last is still with age, his motion slow. He heaves for breath, he staggers to and fro, and clouds of issuing smoke his nostrils loudly blow. Yet, equal in success, they ward, they strike. Their ways are different, but their art alike. Before, behind, the blows are dealt. Around their hollow sides the rattling thumps resound. A storm of strokes, well meant, with fury flies, and errs about their temples, ears, and eyes. Nor always errs, for oft the gauntlet draws a sweeping stroke along the crackling jaws, heavy with age. Entellus stands his ground, but with his warping body wards the wound. His hand and watchful eye keep even pace, while Dares traverses and shifts his place. And like a captain who beleaguers round some strong-built castle on a rising ground, views all the approaches with observing eyes. This and that other part in vain he tries, and more on industry than force relies. With hands on high, Atellus threats the foe, but Dares watched the motion from below, and slipped aside, and shunned the long descending blow. Entellus wastes his forces on the wine, and thus deluded of the stroke designed, headlong and heavy fell his ample breast, and weighty limbs his ancient mother press'd. So falls a hollow pine that long had stood on Ida's height, or Erymanthus wood, torn from the roots. The differing nations rise, and shouts and mingled murmurs rend the skies. Acestus runs with eager haste to raise the fallen companion of his youthful days. Dauntless he rose, and to the fight returned. With shame his glowing cheeks, his eyes with fury burned. Disdain and conscious virtue fired his breast, and with redoubled force his foe he pressed. He lays on load with either hand amain, and headlong drives the Trojan o'er the plain. Nor stops, nor stays, nor rest, nor breath allows, but storm of stroke descend about his brows. A rattling tempest and a hail of blows. But now the prince, who saw the wild increase of wounds, commands the combatants to cease, and bounds Entellus' wrath, and bids the peace. First to the Trojans spent with toil he came, and soothed his sorrow for the suffered shame. What fury seized my friend? The gods, said he, to him propitious and averse to thee, have given his arms superior force to thine. 'Tis madness to contend with strength divine. The gauntlet fight thus ended, from the shore his faithful friends unhappy Dares bore. His mouth and nostrils pour'd a purple flood, and pounded teeth came rushing with his blood. Faintly he staggered through the hissing throng, and hung his head and trailed his legs along. The sword and casque are carried by his train, but with his foe the palm and ox remain. The champion then before Aeneas came, proud of his prize, but prouder of his fame. O goddess born, and you, Dardanian host, mark with attention and forgive my boast. Learn what I was by what remains, and know from what impending fate you saved my foe. Sternly he spoke, and then confronts the bull, and on his ample forehead aiming full, the deadly stroke descending pierced the skull. Down drops the beast, nor needs a second wound, but sprawls in pangs of death and spurns the ground. Then thus, in Dares' stead I offer this: Eryx, accept a noble sacrifice. Take the last gift my weathered arms can yield. Thy gauntlets I resign, and here renounce the field. This done, Aeneas orders for the close the strife of archers with contending bows. The mast Sergestus shattered galley bore, with his own hands he raises on the shore. A fluttering dove upon the top they tie, the living mark at which their arrows fly. The rival archers in a line advance, their turn of shooting to receive from chance. A helmet holds their names, the lots are drawn. On the first scroll was read Hippocoon. The people shout, upon the next was found young Menestheus, late with naval honors crowned. The third contained Eurytion's noble name, thy brother Pandarus, and next in fame, whom Pallas urged the treaty to confound, and send among the gifts a feathered wound. Acestes in the bottom last remained, whom not his age from youthful sports restrained. Soon all with vigor bend their trusty bows, and from the quiver each his arrow chose. Hippocoon's was the first, with forceful sway it flew, and whizzing cut the liquid way. Fixed in the mass, the feathered weapon stands. The fearful pigeon flutters in her bands, and the tree trembled, and the shouting cries of the pleased people rend the vaulted skies. Then Mnestheus to the head his arrow drove, with lifted eyes, and took his aim above, but made a glancing shot, and missed the dove, yet missed so narrow that he cut the cord which fastened by the foot the flitting bird. The captive thus released, away she flies, and beats with clapping wings the yielding skies. His bow already bent, Ereuthyon stood, and having first invoked his brother god, his winged shaft with eager haste he sped. The fatal message reached her as she fled. She leaves her life aloft, she strikes the ground, and renders back the weapon in the wound. Acestes, grudging at his lot, remains without a prize to gratify his pains. Yet, shooting upward, sends his shaft, to show an archer's art, and boast his twanging bow. The feathered arrow gave a dire portent, and latter augurs judged from this event. Chafed by the speed, it fired, and as it flew, a trail of following flames ascending drew. Kindling they mount, and mark the shiny way across the skies as falling meteors play, and vanish into wind, or in a blaze decay. The Trojans and Sicilians wildly stare, and trembling turn their wonder into prayer. The Dardan prince put on a smiling face, and strained Acestes with a close embrace. Then, honoring him with gifts above the rest, turned the bad omen, nor his fears confessed. The gods, said he, this miracle have wrought, and ordered you the prize without the lot. Accept this goblet, rough with figured gold, which Thracian Cisseus gave my sire of old. This pledge of ancient amity receive, which to my second sire I justly give. He said, and with the trumpet's cheerful sound, proclaimed him victor, and with laurel crowned. Nor good Ereuthyon envied him the prize, though he transfixed the pigeon in the sky. Who cut the line with second gifts was graced, the third was his whose arrow pierced the mast. The chief, before the games were wholly done, called Periphantes tutor to his son, and whispered thus: with speed Ascanius find, and if his childish troop be ready joined, on horseback let him grace his grandsire's day, and lead his equals armed in just array. He said, and calling out, the cirque he clears. The crowd withdrawn, an open plain appears. And now the noble youths of form divine advance before their fathers in a line. The riders grace the steeds with glory shine. Thus, marching on in military pride, shouts of applause resound from side to side. Their casques adorned with laurel wreaths they wear, each brandishing aloft a cornel spear. Some at their backs their gilded quivers bore, their chains of burnished gold hung down before. 3 graceful troops they formed upon the green, 3 graceful leaders at their head were seen. 12 followed every chief, and left a space between. The first young Priam led, a lovely boy, whose grandsire was the unhappy king of Troy. His race in after times was known to fame, new honors adding to the Latian name. And well the royal boy his Thracian steed became, white with the fetlocks of his feet before, and on his front a snowy star he bore. Then beauteous Attis, with Iülus bred, of equal age, the second squadron led. the last in order, but the first in place. First in the lovely features of his face, rode fair Ascanius on a fiery steed, Queen Dido's gift, and of the Tyrian breed. Sure coursers for the rest the king ordains, with golden bits adorned and purple reins. The pleased spectators peals of shouts renew, and all the parents in the children view their make, their motions, and their sprightly grace. And hopes and fears alternate in their face. The unfledged commanders and their martial train first make the circuit of the sandy plain around their sires, and at the appointed sign, drawn up in beauteous order, form a line. The second signal sounds, the troop divides in three distinguished parts with three distinguished guides. Again they close and once again disjoin. In troop to troop opposed and line to line, they meet, they wheel, they throw their darts afar with harmless rage and well-dissembled war. Then in a round the mingled bodies run, flying they follow and pursuing shun. Broken they break, and rallying they renew in other forms the military shew. At last in order understern they join, and march together in a friendly line. And as the Cretan labyrinth of old, with wandering ways and many a winding fold, involved the weary feet without redress in a round error which denied recess. So fought the Trojan boys in warlike play, turned and returned, and still a different way. Thus dolphins in the deep each other chase in circles, when they swim around the watery race. This game, these carousels, Ascanius taught, and building Alba to the Latins brought, showed what he learned. The Latin sires impart to their succeeding sons the graceful art. From these imperial Rome received the game, which Troy, the youths, the Trojan troop, they name. Thus far the sacred sports they celebrate, but fortune soon resumed her ancient hate. For while they pay their dead his annual dues, those envied rites Saturnian Juno views, and sends the goddess of the various foe to try new methods of revenge below. Supplies the winds to wing her airy way, where in the port secure the navy lay. Swiftly fair Iris down her arch descends, and undiscerned her fatal voyage ends. She saw the gathering crowd, and gliding thence the desert shore, and fleet without defense. The Trojan matrons on the sands alone, with sighs and tears, Anchises' death bemoan. Then turning to the sea their weeping eyes, their pity to themselves renews their cries. Alas, said one, what oceans yet remain for us to sail, what labors to sustain? All take the word, and with a general groan implore the gods for peace and places of their own. The goddess, great in mischief, views their pains, and in a woman's form her heavenly limbs restrains. In face and shape old Beroe she becomes, Doricles' wife, a venerable dame, once blessed with riches and a mother's name. Thus changed amidst the crying crowd she ran, mixed with the matrons, and these words began. O wretched we, whom not the Grecian power nor flames destroyed in Troy's unhappy hour! O wretched we, reserved by cruel fate beyond the ruins of the sinking state! Now 7 revolving years are wholly run since this improsperous voyage we begun. Since tossed from shores to shores, from lands to lands, inhospitable rocks and barren sands, Wandering in exile through the stormy sea, we search in vain for flying Italy. Now, cast by fortune on this kindred land, what should our rest and rising walls withstand, or hinder here to fix our banish'd band? O country lost and gods redeem'd in vain, if still in endless exile we remain! Shall we no more the Trojan walls renew, or streams of some dissembled Simois view? Haste, join with me, the unhappy fleet consume. Cassandra bids, and I declare her doom. In sleep I saw her, she supplied my hands. For this I more than dreamt, with flaming brands. With these, said she, these wandering ships destroy. These are your fatal seats, and this your Troy. Time calls you now, the precious hour employ. Slack not the good presage, while heav'n inspires our minds to dare, and gives the ready fires. See, Neptune's altars minister their brands. The god is pleased, the god supplies our hands. And from the pile a flaming fire she drew, and, toss'd in air, amidst the galleys threw. Wrapp'd in amaze, the matrons wildly stare. Then Pyrgo reverenc'd for her hoary hair, Pyrgo, the nurse of Priam's num'rous race. No Beroe this, though she belies her face. What terrors from her frowning front arise! Behold a goddess in her ardent eyes. What rays around her heav'nly face are seen! Mark her majestic voice, and more than mortal mien. Beroe but now I left, whom pin'd with pain her age and anguish from these rites detain. She said. The matrons, seiz'd with new amaze, roll their malignant eyes, and on the navy gaze. They fear and hope, and neither part obey. They hope the fated land, but fear the fatal way. The goddess, having done her task below, mounts up on equal wings, and bends the painted bow. Struck with the sight, and seiz'd with rage divine, the matrons prosecute their mad design. They shriek aloud, they snatch with impious hands the food of altars, fires, and flaming brands. Green boughs and saplings mingled in their haste, and smoking torches on the ships they cast. The flame, unstopped at first, more fury gains, and Vulcan rides at large with loosened reins. Triumphant to the painted sterns he soars, and seizes in this way the banks and crackling oars. Eumelus was the first the news to bear, while yet they crowd the rural theatre. Then what they hear is witnessed by their eyes. A storm of sparkles and of flames arise. Ascanius took the alarm, while yet he led his early warriors on his prancing steed. And spurring on, his equal soon o'erpassed, nor could his frighted friends reclaim his haste. Soon as the royal youth appeared in view, he sent his voice before him as he flew. What madness moves you, matrons, to destroy the last remainders of unhappy Troy? Not hostile fleets, but your own hopes you burn, and on your friends your fatal fury turn. Behold your own Ascanius. While he said, he drew his glittering helmet from his head, in which the youths to sportful arms led. By this Aeneas and his train appear, and now the women, seized with shame and fear, dispersed to woods and cavern take their flight. Abhor their actions and avoid the light. Their friends acknowledge and their error find, and shake the goddess from their altar. Not so the raging fires their fury cease, but lurking in the scenes with seeming peace, work on their way amidst the smouldering tow, sure in destruction, but in motion slow. The silent plague through the green timber eats, and vomits out a tardy flame by fits. Down to the keels and upward to the sails the fire descends, or mounts, but still prevails. Nor buckets poured, nor strength of human hand can the victorious element withstand. The pious hero rends his robe, and throws to heavens his hand, and with his friends his vows. "O Jove," he cried, "if prayers can yet have place, if thou abhorrest not all the Dardan race, if any spark of pity still remain, if gods are gods and not invoked in vain, yet spare the relics of the Trojan train, yet from the flames our burning vessels free, or let thy fury fall alone on me. At this devoted head thy thunder throw, and send the willing sacrifice below." Scarce had he said, when southern storms arise, from pole to pole the forky lightning flies. Loud rattling shakes the mountains and the plain, heaven bellies downward and descends in rain. Cold sheets of water from the clouds are sent, which hissing through the flanks the flames prevent, and stop the fiery pest. 4 ships alone burnt to the waist, and for the fleet atone. But doubtful thoughts the hero's heart divide, if he should still in Sicily reside, forgetful of his fates, or tempt the main in hope the promised Italy to gain. Then Notes, old and wise, to whom alone the will of heaven by Pallas was foreshown, versed in portents, experienced and inspired to tell events and what the fates required. Thus, while he stood to neither part inclined, with cheerful words relieved his labouring mind. "O goddess born, resigned in every state, with patience bear, with prudence push your fate. By suffering well our fortune we subdue, fly when she frowns, and when she calls, pursue. Your friend Acestes is of Trojan kind, to him disclose the secrets of your mind. Trust in his hands your old and useless train, too numerous for the ships which yet remain. The feeble,
really.
old, indulgent
We took
of
care
their
of all the remaining
ease,
devils,
the
and
dames
that
who
was it.
dread the dangers
I
of
still
the
have a job to
seas,
do
with
that's
all
far
the
from done,
dastard
which is to
crew who
eliminate
dare not
every
stand
last
the shock of
I
battle
need
with
to
your
ensure that
foes by
monsters like
land.
my father never come
Here
about
you may
again.
build a common
Now, he
town for
promised to
all,
help me hunt down the demons,
and from
even though he's
Acestes'
part one
name
himself.
Acesta call.
But now I realize that
The
there are
reasons, with
humans
his
as
friend's
evil as any
experience
devil,
joined,
as well as
encouraged
kind
much,
and
but more
compassionate demons
disturbed
in
his
this
mind.
universe. At least I found
'Twas
one
dead of
so-called
night, when
devil
to
who
his
was able to
slumbering
shed tears
eyes
for those who
his
thirsted.
father's shade descended
That's
from the
enough for me to believe
skies.
in him.
And thus he spoke: "O more than vital breath, loved while I lived, and dear even after death! O son,
speaking
in
of
various
the
toils
devil,
and
he finally
troubles
decided on a
tossed,
name
the
for his
king
shop.
of heaven
It took him
employs my
quite a while
careful
to pick
ghost on his command. The god who saved from fire your flaming
Want
fleet,
another
and
name?
heard your just desire,
Devil may
the
cry.
wholesome counsel of your friend receive, and here the coward train and women leave. The chosen youth, and those who nobly dare, transport to tempt the dangers of the war. The stern Italians will their courage try, rough are their manners, and their minds are high. But first to Pluto's palace you shall go, and seek my shade among the blest below. For not with impious ghosts my soul remains, nor suffer'd with the damn'd perpetual pains, but breathes the living air of soft Elysian plains. The chaste Sibylla shall your steps convey, and blood of offer'd victims free the way. There shall you know what realms the gods assign, and learn the fates and fortunes of your line. But now, farewell! I vanish with the night, and feel the blast of heaven's approaching light." He said, and mix'd with shades, and took his airy flight. "Whither so fast? the filial duty cried. And why, ah why, the wish'd embrace denied? He said, and rose, as holy zeal inspires. He rakes hot embers, and renews the fires. His country gods and Vesta then adores with cakes and incense, and their aid implores. Next for his friends and royal host he sent, revealed his vision and the gods' intent with his own purpose. All, without delay, the will of Jove and his desires obeyed. They list with woman each degenerate name, who dares not hazard life for future fame. These they cashier, the brave remaining few. Oars, banks, and cables half consumed renew. The prince designs a city with the plow, the lots their several tenements allow. This part is named from Ilium, that from Troy, and the new king ascends the throne with joy. A chosen senate from the people draws, appoints the judges, and ordains the laws. Then on the top of Erx they begin a rising temple to the Paphian queen. Anchises last is honored as a god. A priest is added, annual gifts bestowed, and groves are planted round his blessed abode. 9 days they pass in feasts, their temples crowned, and fumes of incense in the fanes abound. Then from the south arose a gentle breeze, that curled the smoothness of the glassy sea. The rising winds a ruffling gale afford, and call the merry mariners aboard. Now loud laments along the shores resound, of parting friends in close embraces bound. The trembling women, the degenerate train, who shun the frightful dangers of the main. Even those desire to sail and take their share of the rough passage and the promised war, whom good Aeneas cheers, and recommends to their new master's care his fearful friends. On Eryx's altar 3 fat calves he lays, a lamb new fallen to the stormy seas. Then slips his hawsers and his anchors weighs. High on the deck the godlike hero stands, with olive crowned, a charger in his hands. Then cast the reeking entrails in the brine, and pour'd the sacrifice of purple wine. Fresh gales arise, with equal strokes they vie, and brush the buxom seas, and o'er the billows fly. Meantime the mother goddess, full of fears, to Neptune thus address'd with tender tears: "The pride of Jove's imperious queen, the rage, the malice which no sufferings can assuage, compel me to do these prayers, since neither fate, nor time, nor pity can remove her hate. E'en Jove is thwarted by his haughty wife, still vanquish'd, yet she renews the strife. As if 'twere little to consume the town, which awed the world and wore th' imperial crown, she prosecutes the ghost of Troy with pains, and gnaws even to the bones the last remains. Let her the causes of her hatred tell, but you can witness its effects too well. You saw the storm she raised on Libyan floods, that mixed the mounting billows with the clouds, when, bribing Aeolus, she shook the main, and moved rebellion in your watery reign. With fury she possessed the Dardanes, to burn their fleet with execrable flames, and forced Aeneas, when his ships were lost, to leave his followers on a foreign coast. For what remains, your godhead I implore, and trust my son to your protecting power. If neither Jove nor fate's decree withstand, secure this passage to the Latian land." Then thus the mighty ruler of the main: "What may not Venus hope from Neptune's reign? My kingdom claims your birth; my late defence of your endanger'd fleet may claim your confidence. Nor less by land than sea my deeds declare. how much your lov'd Aeneas is my care. Thee, Xanthus, and thee, Simois, I attest, your Trojan troops, when proud Achilles press'd, and drove before him headlong on the plain, and dash'd against the walls the trembling train, when floods were fill'd with bodies of the slain, when crimson Xanthus, doubtful of its way, stood up on ridges to behold the sea, new heaps came tumbling in and choked his way, when your Aeneas fought, but fought with odds of force unequal, and unequal gods. I spread a cloud before the victor's sight, sustained the vanquish'd, and secured his flight. Even then secured him, when I sought with joy the vow'd destruction of ungrateful Troy. My will's the same, fair goddess, fear no more, your fleet shall safely gain the Latian shore. Their lives are given, one destin'd head alone shall perish, and for the multitudes atone. Thus, having arm'd with hopes her anxious mind, his finny team Saturnian Neptune join'd, then adds the foamy bridle to their jaws, and to the loosen'd reins permits the laws. High on the waves his azure car he guides, its axles thunder, and the sea subsides, and the smooth ocean rolls her silent tides. The tempests fly before their father's face, trains of inferior gods his triumph grace, and monster whales before their master play, and choirs of Tritons crowd the watery way. The marshall'd powers in equal troops divide, to right and left the gods his better side enclose, and on the worse the nymphs and Nereids ride. Now smiling hope with sweet vicissitude within the hero's mind his joys renew. He calls to raise the masts, the sheets display, the cheerful crew with diligence obey. They scud before the wind and sail in open sea. Ahead of all the master pilot steers, and as he leads the following navy veers. The steeds of night had travell'd half the sky, the drowsy rowers on their benches lie, when the soft god of sleep with easy flight descends, and draws behind a trail of light. Thou, Palinurus, art his destined prey, to thee alone he takes his fatal way. Dire dreams to thee an iron sleep he bears, and lighting on the prow the form of Phorbas wears. Then thus the traitor god began his tale: The winds, my friend, inspire a pleasing gale, the ships without thy care securely sail. Now steal an hour of sweet repose, and I will take the rudder and thy room supply. To whom the yawning pilot, half asleep: Me dost thou bid to trust the treacherous deep, the harlot smiles of her dissembling faith, and to her fate commit the Trojan race? Shall I believe the siren south again, and oft betray'd not know the monster main? He said, his fasten'd hands the rudder keep, and fix'd on heav'n his eyes repel invading sleep. The god was wroth, and at his temples threw a branch in Lethe dipp'd, and drunk with Stygian dew. The pilot, vanquish'd by the pow'r divine, soon clos'd his swimming eyes, and lay supine. Scarce were his limbs extended at their length, the god, insulting with superior strength, fell heavy on him, plung'd him in the sea, and with the stern the rudder tore away. Headlong he fell, and struggling in the main, cried out for helping hands, but cried in vain. The victor demon mounts obscure in air, while the ship sails without the pilot's care. On Neptune's faith the floating fleet relies, but what the man forsook, the god supplies. And o'er the dangerous deep secure the navy flies. lies, guides by the Sirens' cliffs a shelfy coast, long infamous for ships and sailors lost and white with bones. The impetuous ocean roars and rocks rebellow from the sounding shore. The watchful hero felt the knocks and found the tossing vessel sailed on shoaly ground. Sure of his pilot's loss, he takes himself the helm and steers aloof and shuns the shelf. Inly he grieved, and groaning from the breast deplored his death, and thus his pain expressed. For faith reposed on seas and on the flattering sky, thy naked corpse is doomed on shores unknown to lie. End of Book 5.
Book 6, Part 1 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Joshua Christensen. The Aeneid, by Publius Virgilius Maro. Translated by John Dryden. Book 6, The World Below. Part 1. He said, and wept, then spread his sails before the winds, and reach'd at length the Cumaean shore. Their anchors dropp'd, his crew the vessels moor. They turn their heads to sea, their sterns to land, and greet with greedy joy the Italian strand. Some strike from clashing flints their fiery seed, some gather sticks the kindled flames to feed, or search for hollow trees and fell the woods, or trace through valleys the discover'd floods. Thus, while their several charges they fulfil, the pious prince ascends the sacred hill, where Phoebus is adored, and seeks the shade which hides from sight his venerable maid. Deep in a cave the Sibyl makes abode, thence full of fate returns and of the god. Through Trivia's grove they walk, and now behold, and enter now the temple roofed with gold. Where Daedalus, to fly the Cretan shore, his heavy limbs on jointed pinions bore, the first who sailed in air, 'tis sung by fame, to the